Bring it on.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Do you want the whole truth? I don't think you're ready.
Governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people.
It's Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Well, did you see it today? The closing arguments of the George Zimmerman trial. The legal analysis, have you been following? They're deliberating now. They've asked for an itemized list of the evidence. And I believe a clarification on the definitions of the law. George Zimmerman looking at, charges of either second-degree murder or manslaughter. Our guest, Hans von Spakovsky, is the former counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, the author of Who's Counting, and senior legal analyst at the Heritage Foundation. And Hans, you brought us a story. We talked earlier this week about the Department of Justice certainly doing a bit of an overstep when it came to their intervention into the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin shooting case. And, first off, have there been any new developments? Specifically, do we have evidence that suggests that the lead detective was fired off this, or the chief was fired because of the way he was handling the case, because he was looking at this case and saying, there's no there in the sense of charges?
Yeah, in fact, it was very interesting. He was interviewed by CNN, and really that interview confirmed what we have seen and suspected all along, that this was a political prosecution from the very start, because what he said was that he was constantly being contacted by city officials, the city manager, saying, why haven't you arrested Zimmerman yet? When are you going to arrest him? And when he told them, look, I have no probable cause, I'm investigating it, you can't arrest somebody without probable cause, they basically said, we don't care. We want this guy arrested. Now, why would they do that? Because they were getting so much political pressure to indict this guy and arrest him. And that may have been, for example, why they avoided going to a grand jury, which is normally what you do in a situation like this.
What fuels that? What motivates the Department of Justice to act in that manner?
Well, this was local prosecutors and the Florida state government doing that. And what clearly motivated it were all the protests and the cries that they were acting, officials were acting in a racist manner because they didn't immediately arrest the guy. And the Justice Department itself, I wrote earlier this week, look, even if Zimmerman is found innocent, which I think he should be, the evidence seems pretty clear that he's acting in self-defense, he may face a whole nother trial, because I can just about guarantee you that the U.S. Justice Department will try to go after him for criminal civil rights violations, because they're not about to let this go, and they have shown how biased they are.
All right. Now, Hans, you have the state government, just to get back to this, because this is a point, pressuring the chief because of the calls of racism. And then you have the federal government and their behavior in the sense of the Department of Justice going in and being part of an organizing protests and working with the likes of Jesse Jackson. And my question is there a genuine, do you believe there's a genuine call for justice here? Because as you've mentioned, when we look at the facts, even the prosecution witnesses were making points for the defense. I don't understand. Do they think they're going to gain politically? Are there so many people in general that really believe this is racism? What do you think's going on here?
There are, and particularly within the administration. Look, racial politics drives, unfortunately, too many of the people that work at the Justice Department, particularly in the Civil Rights Division, which will be examining possible federal charges against him. They simply believe that any time a black is a victim of a crime and the person who engaged in the behavior was white, or in this case Hispanic, they believe that it was or that racism was involved, even when it has absolutely nothing to do with the case.
Well, that's frightening because
it is, and it should be frightening to the American people. But we know that's the case, and we know that it goes all the way to the top. Eric Holder has that same attitude.
The man who said we are a nation of cowards when it came to the discussion of race. I guess being brave is conjuring racism and exploiting it any chance you get. We talked about the Department of Justice being racist, and we've had some discussion even on the Facebook page here of saying everybody's racist. You know what, Hans? I'm looking. You worked in the Civil Rights Division. You were the Assistant Attorney General, Counsel 2 in the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. What do you make of our current level of racism in this country? I mean, is there something, I'm asking, you've worked in the place where you're enforcing law and helping enforce law and make sure people are treated equally under the law, regardless of how much pigmentation, what color they are. Am I missing something? Because
No,
I don't see the America they're seeing it.
We have less racism today than we have ever had in our country. The vast majority of people in this country are not racist, don't have discriminatory attitudes, and this is all over the country, including in what everybody refers to as the Old South.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen, and I've lived in the South and had the blessing of being able to do so. And wow, it's frustrating. I can only imagine for someone who's been on the front lines of advocating for people to be equal under the law, who you've written about your family, the history, and how special America is. This is really troubling. Do you believe there will be violence?
Yeah, I think potentially there will be if he is found innocent. We have all kinds of groups, including, by the way, the new Black Panther Party, which, of course, Eric Holder directed that the voter intimidation case against them be dismissed. They have made threats against the life of Zimmerman.
And something about a $10,000 bounty before, in some capacity. And so, what should the president do, in your estimation? Not just any president dealing with this particular situation. You have 30 minutes with him, and you say, "Mr. President, here's what you need to do," because there's a powder keg.
Well, two things about that. First of all, he should not have injected himself into the beginning of this case to begin with. I mean, by doing that, he prejudiced the investigation, the prosecution of this. But if Zimmerman is found innocent, what he should do is come out and say that we should respect the jury's verdict. We should respect what they found. That's the way our system works. And he should, frankly, be harsh against anyone who threatens violence. Remember, his Justice Department never opened up an investigation of the new Black Panther Party and the bounty they put up. I can guarantee you that if a white racist group had done exactly the same thing, Justice Department prosecutors would have been all over that case.
Hans, what do you make of the behavior of the judge earlier this week in the questioning of George Zimmerman? Was that something that you have seen before? Is that normal for those of us in the laity watching a judge put somebody under oath regarding if they'll testify or not? Well,
it's not unusual at the end of a case for a judge to question a defendant to make sure that they realize they had an opportunity to testify or not. But in this situation where his lawyers are objecting to the question because he obviously wasn't prepared to answer it, I thought it was a bit strange that the judge persisted in trying to ask that question.
Evaluating the closing arguments, you've talked about what you feel the case should be and the verdict should be. What do you make of, should we read anything into if the jury comes out in a shorter period of time as opposed to a longer deliberation over weeks versus days?
No, juries are very tough to predict, and whether or not they come out in a short period of time or a longer one, boy, I really don't know what to say about that.
All right. I could save our last topic because of time. for Monday or Tuesday. That's see, this is what happens. Hans gets a request from me pretty much every day because he's just that good. And I have Harry Reid and talking about his frustration and going to the nuclear option. I just want to make sure that we all recognize Harry Reid is not talking about Iran nuclear option. He's actually talking about a procedure nuclear option that he's argued about in the past. Will you just explain what the nuclear option is, Hans?
He wants to get rid of the ability of the minority party in the Senate to filibuster or debate executive nominations. That means nominations of the president, like the Secretary of Defense and other things. And it's called a nuclear option because, look, there's been a long tradition for over 200 years of being able to filibuster in the Senate, and it's important because it allows the senators to debate issues and particularly to bring attention to nominees, the public, bring attention to them. And getting rid of it is a very, very bad idea, one that will cause horrendous problems. And it's not needed. This president actually has a higher confirmation rate with his nominees than President Bush did.
And he can make recess appointments when there's no recess. Final question, Hans. Rule of law in general, 2013, July 12th. Have you ever seen the rule of law in your lifetime be so crossed so many times?
No, and I've never seen it with as much as this executive branch has done that. They have shown more than any prior president, Republican or Democrat, that they really believe they can do whatever they want, no matter what the law passed by Congress says. And I think that's a very bad development. I think it's dangerous. It's not good for the country.
Not a man of hyperbole. And when you say that, that should shake us all because we want honest government, whether we're an RD or liberal conservative. We genuinely desire that. And Hans, we appreciate you shedding light on how that's not taking place.
Well, thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Hans von Spakovsky. And he even went overtime there. Great guy. I know. He's Crane, I got a family. You're nearly at 20 minutes after the hour of 7. Come on, man. What are you doing? I had more questions, too. I need more time. More time. On the flip side, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. We'll bring you some of the clips of the week. I promise you that some will put a smile on your face. I will put a smile on your face. I'll make sure of it. I'm looking up. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. AFR Talk.